Trying to have a social life. In your early 20s, you're predisposed to be social. Today's Thursday? No worries, let's have a chill night of bar crawling and slam tacos like we're baseball pitchers in a batting cage. Fun day Friday, time to drink liquor, dress promiscuously, and hit up a low-key party or a bar that has definitely gotten in trouble with the police. It's Tuesday? Well, let's still have a night-long dinner and act like we don't have adult responsibilities. But Saturdays are the crown jewel, the belle of the ball that embodied our party social culture. If you weren't doing something on Saturday and you were old enough to actively serve in the army, were you even human? Tell a young 20-something you're doing nothing on a Saturday, and they'll give you a look like you're one of the 1,000-pound sisters on TLC. Saturdays involved long pre-games and preparation. One would often feel like a church parishioner who arrived a half hour before Mass simply to pray solo. For the average churchgoer, this feels like doing more than you needed to. It was like doing a half-hour cardio warm-up to a 2-hour cardio workout. My family once got yelled at by a lady in church for whispering before the Mass had even begun. She's probably the type of woman who thought priests guilty of touching children were framed by the devil. Now that I'm pushing into my 30s, I have to know days ahead of time if I'm going out on a Saturday. I can't be told at 3 p.m. on a Saturday that we're going out late that night. When I was younger, you simply had to be ready for anything. It was like being enlisted in the army and never knowing where you might be deployed. Potentially a basement house party, a dorm room, or a sketchy neighborhood bar that would forget to check for IDs. Not only would you have to be prepared for anything, the same held true for the parties themselves. My friend Jessica used to host the biggest house parties. There were themes and jungle juice and a transformed hotbox in the garage. One party, I had 2 drinks and kissed someone who had smoked weed, and then proceeded to make out with their kitchen toaster. I kept making comments like, "That toaster wants me." That night alone was a perfect night for public service announcements on anti-drug use, anti-underage drinking, and birth control. I distinctly remember one night in the dorm room drinking vodka, and after 2 shots found myself drunk. This was impossible considering I was a 200-plus thick boy. Tipsy, maybe, although even that feels like more of a stretch than spandex leggings going over a boulder. But me being drunk off of 2 shots was more unlikely than Bravo picking Cleveland as their next Real Housewives franchise. Thankfully, I felt so overcome by those 2 shots that I left the party before the RA came to write the whole room up. I remember early on I snuck booze out of my parents' house. My parents weren't drinkers, and so much alcohol was just left downstairs unattended. At the time, I justified that after years of going unused, my parents lost the right to their own booze. I assumed they would never notice that I had cleaned out the mini bottles of wine and unopened eggnog liquor. Years later, I found out they had noticed and hadn't cared. After all, who can get that slushed on 8% eggnog liquor, let alone drink any of it? If anything, they were probably happy I was clearing out their house and home of terrible booze. The booze was so old that it had fermented into a new hybrid of stank. What was supposed to be wine tasted like liquor, and the eggnog liquor had an aftertaste that couldn't be wiped out of your mouth. When you're underaged, drinking is 50% fun and 50% being on constant alert. You're a gazelle in a world filled with lions who want to write you up, write you a ticket, or shake their head in that kids these days mannerism. Will someone find you with that 5% wine cooler? Will you be shamed? Sometimes it felt like getting caught by the RA was a version of the Scarlet Letter, but you'd wear a big D for drunk. One weekend, my roommate Carly took us down to Ashland University, which is located in the middle of an Ohioan cornfield. The trip was overall pretty uneventful. But anything is exciting when it's different from the regular night out. Even a subpar night out at Ashland University provided diversity to our overall party experience. Our perception of Ashland parties was similar to when privileged children do service for the first time and go, "I didn't realize it was this bad." The most exciting moment heading into the trip was when Carly's sister told us that she had the perfect match for me. At this point in life, I was skeptical of women who had believed they had perfect matches for gay men. Sometimes it felt like the only thing that mattered was that the match was gay, as if gays were so rare that no other criteria mattered. But other times, it feels like your friends think you're uglier than you are. If you try and match me, a solid 6 or 7, with a 2, I wonder, maybe the issue is me. Upon our arrival, Carly's sister brought out the match. I was absolutely taken aback. This man was very pretty inside, but was not rocking much in the looks department. It wasn't like I was pro league baseball and he was minor league. The situation was that I was minor league, and this guy was on a children's t-ball team that played for fun and didn't keep the score. When a friend tells you, I have the perfect match for you, they're staking their trust, skills, abilities, and frankly, the entire friendship on the line. That's why I never indulge in playing Super Matchmaker. Too many explosive bombs to have in your hands. After the matchmaking failure that TLC could have turned into a new programming piece, we prepared for our night out on the town. We discovered that Ashland University's underage drinking scene was like something out of the 1920s prohibition. Kids snuck through the streets and yards as if they were part of some secret network to smuggle booze. When a house party got word that cops were in the neighborhood, they blacked out the house as if nobody was home. It was a very tense situation. But some of the Ashland kids loved the world they lived in, which felt Orwellian. And since I actually read Orwell, I feel like I can bring him to the forefront. You read that right. Some kids loved the danger. Talk about some warped privilege of enjoying the neighborhood police's constant surveillance and targeting. How do you even manage to party? It's just too stressful. And not worth shuttling around in the dark like some weird historical reenactment so you can drink well vodka in the rundown fraternity house with terrible music in the background. Speaking of rundown fraternity houses, the house parties that my college house hosted were iconic. They were always theme parties, no exceptions. We had a theme party based on Lost, the television show where they were stranded on an island. We had a pumpkin spice party. We felt like saying white girl party might be offensive. We had a Baywatch theme, 2 beer Olympics, and even hosted a band who played in our basement. Not only that, but I insisted we had some of the best jungle juice on the block. We just mixed a bunch of liquor with Dollar Tree mixers. What made the experience pleasant was that we had multiple juices. You could pick between a more berry-forward juice versus a peach or a plum-flavored juice. When I was under the age of 21, I didn't understand why over 21s regularly didn't want to date, communicate, or otherwise make plans with those under the age of 21. But the second I turned 21 and was immediately ushered to Hofbrauhaus for Leaders of Hefeweizen, it made sense. It's like you finally mastered a language and you wish to be accompanied by those with similar vernacular. I had waited longer than most in my college class to turn legal, and now that I was finally 21 in my senior year, it was time for me to shine. And shine I did not. I was frequently the DD, simply because I was too cheap to believe in paying $50 for Uber, and probably because I was driving a Trailblazer at the time. I spent too many nights being sober at Dive Bar, a downtown Cleveland bar that pretended to be a dive bar, but was a glamorized heterosexual haven of bad dancing, 90s music remixes, and slightly rude staff. I'm the cheap friend. I'm fun. I can be ready to clown around and get wild, or even get cultural and introspective, but I'm cheap. I would gladly DD if that meant someone else would buy me a couple of drinks for my time. Let's go do this expensive thing, is a phrase I hear. Not in those exact terms. Are you sure? That bar patio has a happy hour with food. We can dress up in nice clothes like tuxedos. Well, the bar doesn't have a dress code. It's no surprise that I travel cheaply. I want that Frontier back of the bus, let's drive in a gas-efficient vehicle kind of cheap. When Monica and I went to Detroit, we stayed at the cheapest place we could find, dubbed Robert's Riverside Hotel. From the jump, that name is fancy. You imagine it's on the riverside, and fancy since Robert is a very opulent Caucasian name. Roberts have golf clubs, enjoy ancient-ass wine, and have fancy foreign cars. Even saying the name Robert is the epitome of class. Robert's Riverside Hotel is cheap, with mixed reviews, and it's close to downtown. We arrived to find a peculiar parking lot that's filled with random routes and tons of cars. It looked like one of those apocalyptic graveyards of vehicles left abandoned. After figuring out the parking, we walk in, and hotel guests are attacking the staff with complaints about how things are dirty. In the background on television is Game of Thrones, which weirdly fits the scene. While people die on the television behind us, guests are killing the waitstaff in front of us. I felt badly for the front desk attendant. He's sitting there like Eeyore having an existential crisis as everyone dumps their dirty laundry on him. Literally, the place was so filthy, I'm sure there were multiple complaints about the linens. Of course, this guy can't fix your bedroom lights or plumbing issues. Even if he could, he has to listen to another 10 people in line complain. I gotta admit, the $18 resort fee was exuberant. If that hotel was a resort, then I'm a goddamn stud. You can't have one 10-foot pool and a river view and call that a resort. Okay, they did put lemons in the reception area water, but again, not enough to warrant a resort fee. Monica decided to use her credit card when we checked in, and I would pay my half digitally. Monica's card swiped, but was declined, which confused Monica and I, but the hotel attendant appeared unfazed as if this was common occurrence. We ran it a few times until Monica discovered that her credit card company had flagged this purchase as a scam. For some reason, Monica's credit card was trying to warn us about what was waiting for us. Half of the room's lights didn't work. Only 2 outlets worked. There was no microwave, no fridge. There were coffee grounds, but no coffee maker. I guess it was a deconstructed coffee that hipsters like. The bathroom light fixture was off the wall and falling down in a freeform art piece way. Sally, how does that falling light fixture make you feel? Well, the thin wires make me feel like society is on its last string. When you walked into the fitness room, you immediately wanted to run out of the fitness room. That's how bad it was. In a way, it did its job. So did that make the fitness room actually good if we're running out of it? There were 2 broken treadmills and 2 crusty ellipticals, one which looked like the original prototype of an elliptical and sounded like something straight out of the 18th century. You could churn butter with that elliptical. You can work out and have butter for breakfast. I can't believe gyms aren't investing in dual-purpose cardio machines. Take my workout energy and make me contribute to society. But here's the real travesty. Your boy wanted a nice vodka Sprite. It's a perfect resort drink, right? Turns out the hotel room didn't come with cups. There was an ice bucket, but no cups. So I had to buy my own cups at the Dollar Tree next door. Being frugal on vacations can backfire. While we stayed at the resort, another instance happened which further confirmed this was not a resort. There was 6 a.m. construction. Kid you not, we woke up and there was some jackhammer or some loud machine going at it. Another highlight of that trip was when we Ubered from the music festival back to the hotel, and our older conservative woman driver made comments about the festival and the sins happening there. I do not believe she knew we had just been at that festival, but if she had, she would automatically be a top 10 audacious bitch of all time. Being frugal on vacations can backfire. See the Chastity Shawl essay from earlier. Sometimes I'm so focused on being cheap that it actually becomes problematic. My friend Kelsey heard that my other friend Michelle and I were going to Toronto and had frugal spending advice for us. As soon as you cross the border, go buy some booze. Kelsey informed us like a Jehovah's Witness you'd actually want to ring your door. Because you're on the border. There's no tax on the liquor. It's tax-free liquor right there. I didn't do any research on Kelsey's statement about the tax-free liquor. Like a cartoon character whose eyes become giant money symbols, I needed no further convincing. Once Michelle and I crossed the border, we got to the nearest store and stocked up on some non-Canadian American taxed liquor and placed it in the back seat. All right, let's go to Toronto, Michelle said, starting up her car again as we cheered over our savings. However, for some reason, the only way out of the convenience store was to cross over to America. We have to go through the border again, with booze, I whispered. Michelle's hands clenched on the wheel. Can you carry booze to the border like this? Michelle questioned. I was no borders expert. The only borders I knew about was the old bookstore that closed down during the post-08 recession. Maybe we should just hide the bottle then, I figured, shifting our clothes over the 2 bottles in the back seat. Michelle suggested putting the bottles in the trunk, but I thought that was a bit conspicuous. After circling the block and crossing the river, we re-entered into Canada. Weren't you guys just here? The Canadian border agent explained. We gave them the sob story of stopping at the convenience store and had exited only to America. I see, the Canadian border agent nodded. The story seemed believable. American tourists desperate for snacks and beverages stopped at the first stop they saw, only to find it was designated for people leaving the country. I thought maybe we would be fine, But that's when the Canadian border agent asked us to pull up and over to the side. Michelle and I took a deep breath and complied. 2 agents asked us our story and checked the trunk of the car. After inspecting and seeming happy with our story, Michelle and I were allowed through to Canada for the second time in the same hour. As soon as we cleared the border area, Michelle and I squealed with delight like 2 schoolgirls who had gotten away with slightly mischievous behavior. "I can't believe we got away with that," Michelle muttered. "We almost put the booze in the trunk, can you imagine?" We contemplated what our banishment would be had we been caught. Maybe banned and banished? I can't imagine it would be anything that harsh. "Is it smuggling when you've actually bought the booze in Canada?" I questioned. "If anything, we're back home where this booze belongs." The art of the pregame is something that a cheap man like myself enjoys. For those unfamiliar, the pregame is to the night out experience as the pregame practice is to the game. It's a warm-up with drinks, some music, and more conversation than when you go out to the bar later and find it impossible to talk. When the Cleveland Cavaliers won the NBA championship in 2016, the whole city sparkled with excitement. Even though I wasn't the biggest sports fan, I was a Cleveland fan. I take Cleveland shirts with me when I travel the world as if I'm repping the brand. "Is that Chanel?" someone on the streets of Paris or London may ask me. "No, it's Cleveland," I respond with a flip of my long hair, because in this vision I have long, lush locks. The parade took place on a weekday afternoon, and my friend group decided to meet at my house before walking to the Rapid and shuttling downtown. That was a big day for me. I had tried my first Four Loko. I found it to be swill radiation water and chucked most of it down the garbage disposal. I was quite tipsy when we arrived downtown, where throngs of people were waiting to see the grand spectacle. The corner bar close to where we had posted up had $5 Long Islands, so naturally I had 3 of those in an hour, which made the whole trip a $25 event. The sun beat down like a dominatrix, and as the parade continued, I continued to soak up booze and sun. That afternoon, I would have a long shower followed by vomit, having been sun poisoned and booze poisoned at the same time. It was one of the few times where I actually threw up. Probably should have had some vodka water at some point. Most people seek vacation as refuge. They go to Florida or California or some island in the middle of the ocean to delight in tropical paradise. I wonder if people from tropical locations view Midwestern forest terrain as their version of tropical. Or do people living in tropical places realize to themselves, yes, I do live in the tropics. And while lapping up their tropical paradise, the average vacationer probably tries to do much of nothing. They want to relax, and relaxing is doing nothing. Just lying on a beach or in a chair with a drink that has a fruit wedge on the rim. I know some people that will take 2 weeks of their year specifically to go someplace warm and sunny to just unexist for a while. But I'm not good at relaxing vacations. I've always realized I was an on-the-go vacationer, but it wasn't until a trip to North Carolina in 2021 that made me realize that I can only relax for 3 days before going stir-crazy. My good friends Alana and Eric were getting married, and I had been asked to officiate. It was, and I mean this seriously, one of the best honors of my life. Your wedding day is a huge deal. So picking a person that's going to act as the minister for the day is at least a semi-huge deal. The plan was to arrive on Tuesday and leave the following Monday with the wedding on Saturday. The location was Surf City, North Carolina, where tourists ruled for the summer and the relaxed locals chilled all year long. We had booked in the last week of May before the more expensive June to August dates. After all, I'm not the only one who likes to vacation for a better price. Upon my arrival, I discovered that I would be sharing a room with someone, and we would be sleeping on twin bunk beds that were most definitely designed with children in mind. I refused, and no, it wasn't one of those stomp around the house and make demands refusals, but it was one of those moments where I just knew myself well enough to know that this was not going to work. Especially when my roommate turned out to be one of those chatty Cathy types. I love a good discussion, but I view the bedroom as an oasis. I have a friend, let's call them Nina, who visited her boyfriend's parents' new house, which was a very small condo beach property. Nina's boyfriend's sister and partner were also there, which left my friend and her boyfriend to sleep on a terrible air mattress. Upon suggesting they go get a hotel purely for sleeping purposes, Nina's boyfriend's mother threw a hissy fit about how they were ungrateful and implying that she was a bad host. If someone is providing a solution to a situation, it doesn't matter in my opinion. As a host, if someone didn't like the sleeping arrangements, they are more than welcome to shackle up in a hotel. I found space in an alcove under the stairs. It was the perfect place to set up my mattress pad, and I had an outlet to charge my phone. There was not much else I needed in life. I told Alana, my friend who invited me on the trip, about my change of plans. "Are you sure?" Alana said, as if I was suggesting I could sleep in the ocean. I know Alana felt badly, but I much preferred my hidden alcove underneath the stairs. With the exception of a single spider, I never felt bad about being in the basement. The first trip, referred to here as Carolina 1, led up to the marriage between my friends Alana and Eric. The days leading up involved no hard plans, and as they slipped by, I became increasingly on edge, looking to do something. "There will be no plans on this trip besides maybe a dinner," someone said when another person in the group asked about plans. I decided to keep my mouth shut moving forward about making hard plans. Instead, I walked the shores and the town area like a specter clinging for social plans. I began to become unhinged after 3 days of relaxing nothingness. Recently, I spent 2 days in a row unwinding and doing nothing. I just laid on the couch balancing between different media devices and programs. And then on the third day, I returned to my full force energy that needed to do something. Carolina 2, which happened in May of 2022, had a few more plans, including a trip to Wilmington. We did a ghost tour that featured outrageous stories of ye olde Wilmington, including a few buildings that were currently still haunted. "They won't even stick around at night in this house," the tour lady exclaimed, turning to the house behind us. You'd think if that many spirits were so problematic that a business refused to stay past sundown, they'd exorcise the house. But then it became obvious why one exorcist wouldn't handle this property. The house had been built over the old gallows. You can imagine the hundreds of people who were put to death at the gallows and might be upset with humans. Downtown Wilmington had plenty of cute places, like an ancient dive bar called Barbary Coast. The place was small and tight, and half of the space was devoted to a single pool table. There was a store with all sorts of gimmicks, including incense called Booty Call. I think that's the last scent I'd like if I was trying to be tranquil with incense. We were trying to pick a restaurant when I suggested a nearby place that had a good rating. The group agreed, and so we trekked over to the restaurant. We sat down to find that the menu was littered with weird dishes like duck tenders, ostrich burgers, wild boar soup, and Himalayan yak poutine. Could you legally eat that? In an act that personally was my hell loop, we scrunched together some tip money and quickly vacated the premises. The group blamed me for the suggestion, which I refused to accept. I had merely tossed it out there because it was close by. None of us checked the menu prior to our arrival, which was the real problem. Had one of us investigated, then we probably wouldn't have sat down at a table in the restaurant freaking out over the dishes. There were some normal dishes, but some people complained that they didn't want to pay $15 for a burger. I was a bit taken aback at the wallet clutching. We were on vacation. I know personally I was spending probably $50 to $75 a day on food and activities. If there was ever a time to spend money, it was on vacation. The one thing that my friend Alana wanted during Carolina 2 was an all-group meal, so we got dressed in decently fine clothes and managed to get a reservation at a steakhouse. It was actually our third choice establishment, but finding Thursday night dinner plans in May in a coast Carolina city was an arduous challenge. The restaurant had key lime martinis, which meant I was absolutely sloshed after 2 of them. When I was younger, I was given some opportunities to take immersion trips. One trip was to New Orleans. I was under the age of 21, but it was made pretty clear that there would be no drinking or partying on this trip. We did manage to balance our service and volunteerism with trips to Café Dumont, home of the beignet, and Bourbon Street during the daytime, which has me quite curious to return during nighttime at some point in my life. A lot of work had to do with service programs directly connected to the post-aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. The trip happened in 2014, but the hurricane's damage was so deep and scarring. I remember we took a tour in a van and learned so much about the hurricane damage, but also the government corruption and racial injustices that have plagued New Orleans. It is a vibrant city of culture, welcoming and diverse, but a city where the rich and powerful demand their pound of flesh. One moment that felt sticky was when we volunteered to help sort Mardi Gras beads. I don't know who benefited from this service, but we helped sort thousands of beads. Upon further thought, I believed we were possibly donating beads back to different organizations who were part of Mardi Gras. We were encouraged to keep some of the beads as we so desired. Immersion experiences usually involve nice people, so every 2 minutes someone would say, "Oh, this bead necklace is so you." We probably left with more Mardi Gras necklaces than we sorted. The second immersion trip I did during college was local. The whole idea was to experience homelessness and poverty on a local level. So we stayed in sleeping bags at a nonprofit, went scrummaging for food, and did various service projects around the community. One night in particular, we cooked food using scraps that we had discovered at the Westside Market. The produce vendors unfortunately get rid of some of their product that isn't showable. Bruises, nicks, little issues, and it goes straight into their trash. So we rescued these fruits and vegetables, used spare change to buy rice and beans, and made a little dinner. Nothing will make you more appreciative of the life you have when garbage picking your dinner. One of my closest friends, Billiam, transferred to OSU, so I would find myself going down to Columbus often to see him. Billiam and I actually became close because he was my fraternity little. For those who avoided Greek life, both dramatically and financially, there was a big little system designed as an educational and spiritual journey. When I met Billiam, I thought he was gay, but Billiam at the time kept talking about meeting girls. I'm the kind of person who doesn't have time to speculate on personal sexuality, so I took Billiam at his word and worked to get him hooked up with ladies. The moment I knew Billiam was 100% gay was during our spring fraternity dance. Our mutual friend Monica grinded up on Billiam during the dance party, and Billiam flipped out. You would have thought that Monica had stolen Billiam's identity and successfully financially landed a business loan in his name. However, moments later, when a guy grinded up on Billiam, there were no complaints. That's weird, I muttered following the incident. Billiam's female friend grinded up on him and he was mortified, but a guy, an acquaintance at best, grinded up on Billiam and he had no problem with him. It felt like I was doing rocket science when in reality, the math was easier than 2 + 2. Billiam would eventually come to terms with his sexuality in Australia before moving on to OSU. As I like to say, Billiam went down under to find out he wanted to go down under on dudes. I got trashed on most of these Columbus trips. Billiam is the type of friend that is always ready to go out on the town. I really don't know how he does it. It's like he stores all his energy during the weekdays so he can exude weekend energy. Many times I was so drunk that I willingly agreed to get White Castle. My drunk ass would gobble up breakfast sliders at 2 a.m. and, "Is this chicken?" chicken rings, and enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it's a rock bottom. That was exclusively left for moments of vomit and regret. I've always wondered if there's ever been an issue where a drunk has stammered out, "I love White's Castle," and for a second people are like, okay, they're white trash. Thankfully not racist white trash. Columbus was ripe with stories partially because we would drink and party, but also because Billiam never failed to give us a juicy experience. One time, Billiam, our friend Joanna, and Joanna's boyfriend hit the town. Billiam and Joanna shared a friendly kiss, and Joanna's boyfriend ruined the rest of the trip with his upset jealousy. Another trip involved us going to the busiest bar in the whole land, only to leave in order to get away from a girl who we nicknamed Charcuterie. The nickname for her was the first inspiration for the title of one of my future hits, Charcuterie. Another time we went to a Columbus rooftop bar for happy hour. Upon arrival, we realized it wasn't really a happy hour because the drinks were still $14 each. It was one of those fancy bars where every drink is made with honey, egg whites, ivory shavings, and the zest of a virgin tear. If I'm paying $14 a drink, that drink better make me forget all about my worries and be my personal therapist. I can't even imagine living in LA or New York. Those drinks would probably be closer to $30 a pop. The best cocktails in my life have always been in the $5 to $12 range. After $12, it feels like the cocktail is trying too hard or is just disappointing due to the price point. There was a happy hour where all the apps were $5 each, which meant I personally was ordering $20 worth of food. I always feel a little embarrassed when the server comes out with a giant tray of food and it's all for me. One weekend was devoted to Billiam's own birthday, and 20 or so of us went out to an Italian restaurant. The party ended up being so big that we were split into 2 tables. Thankfully, our table was the fun table. Apparently, the other table was a real drag. The biggest shocker is that 20 people were free to go to a birthday dinner. I have a problem finding 20 contacts in general with whom I would want to have a dinner, even solo. Columbus has 2 main gay bars, Union and Axis, at least according to my experiences. Union was a bit hipster, a bit less about dancing and more about mingling. Axis could be fairly described as a drug den filled with loud music and louder twinks. I always preferred Union. Union was a bit more relaxed, and you could still dance on a platform if you wanted to. I will say, nothing has ever topped the insanity of Akron's own Inner Belt nightclub, which, at the time of my singular visit back in 2017, had a public domain stripper pole. One night at Union, this guy came up almost instantly and said, "Look at those calves, you better be dancing tonight." I did that southern tee maybe tone and instantly found my friends so I could tell them I was being hit on. Later on, I found him on the dance floor where he was straight and here for his bisexual girlfriend. Getting hit on by a straight guy at the gay bar is like having liver surgery on the day of your annual friends and family beer crawl. It's like being sick on vacation or going to Buffalo Wild Wings for wings and they're out of wings. Billiam also has a habit of encouraging us to drink to excess early and quickly. Brunch always has an alcoholic situation, and afternoon drinking is part of the day plan. If it's past 8 o'clock at night and there's not a drink in your hand, it's a personal affront to Billiam. One trip involved us attending a margarita festival that was happening in downtown Columbus. The serving samples of the margaritas were quite out of control, and we were stumbling out of the park after collecting our drinks. I adventurously ordered the pad thai at a non-Thai restaurant during one drunk dinner. Ordering cultural cuisine at an otherwise Americana restaurant is the Russian roulette of dining. The pad thai was served with a soy sauce. Drunk clown Matt thought it would be funny to dramatically toss the soy sauce over my meal, like I was a thinner version of Emerald. In my attempt to be funny, I spilled most of the soy sauce all over my white pants. Some might say the biggest problem was ordering a saucy dish while wearing white pants. The soy sauce made it look like I was peeing dark carmine-colored blood. I drunkenly Ubered to my friend's place for a costume change. Even though my fashion sense never was my strongest quality, being covered in soy sauce never did anyone favors unless you were a dumpling. I am naturally a cheerleader, not the kind with pom-poms and the constant demand of letters from the alphabet to spell out subliminal messages. I'm the friend that reassures people on their choices, helps solve their problems, gives streams of compliments, and if needed, shakes someone awake to their issues like how people used to shake babies before we found out that was bad. The problem is that I often become a confidence booster for other people, but it's exhausting to have a ton of drunk skinnies ask you, "How do I look? Do I look fat?" Meanwhile, my beached walrus butt continuously goes, "Yeah, you look amazing, you look stunning, really." I have some friends who could be in a contract with a model agency, be wearing the hottest outfit in their existence, and still feel like their thigh needs to lose an ounce. It's both awkward and funny when skinny people turn to me, a husky person, and ask if they're fat. Skinny people asking if they themselves are skinny to their larger friends is like asking someone at a funeral if they knew the person who died is dead. After returning from soy sauceless pants, the night proceeded like the Agatha Christie novel, and then there were none. A couple people got sick, a couple people left. One girl wanted to stay at the bar because there was a football player she was infatuated with. Apparently, OSU women were mandated to be on the constant ready for a successful football player to pick them out of the crowd to wife up. At this point, the remaining members of the group went to a gay bar. We were out with a newly appointed gay man. At that point, he had been out for 2 weeks, so a month in gay time. He kept mentioning that people were touching him a little too much. I didn't really have much expertise in that area. All I know is that touching does happen. The only time I'm touched at the club is if someone needs to push past me to get to the bartender. The following Sunday morning ended with brunch and a bookstore with 32 rooms. I absolutely loved the bookstore, but the bookstore was a hell loop for Billiam. While I was saying, "Ooh, room 24, all books," Billiam kept saying, "Another room of books?" When I think of the craziest night I've ever had out and about, it's not even a night where I was drunk. My friend Deanna, in the winter of 2019, was celebrating her birthday. When you have a lot of female friends, it feels like you're constantly celebrating something or other. It's my birthday. It's my birthday week. It's my birthday month. It's my half birthday. It can be exhausting to handle so many celebrations. Can we just hang out without there being an overarching reason to celebrate? Maybe I just want to smash vodka in my face, Cheryl. Writer's note, Deanna, this is definitely not you, I promise. My friend Deanna is one of my professional friends who is always and forever will have their shit together. Whereas I string myself along across gigs and opportunities, Deanna has the blessed comfort of one job, the high-rise apartment, and the corporate sheen. My sheen is more like a lumberjack who got lost in the forest for a year and finally returned to civilization. Currently, Deanna has a hot boyfriend, sees the best concerts, and travels more than a train-bound vagabond. Meanwhile, I'm single, I see those best concerts in the cheapest sections, and get as much travel as a medieval peasant. Deanna's 2019 living situation was a cute one-bedroom, one-bath downtown apartment studio. It was a type of studio apartment that was probably a nice 1.5 to 2K Cleveland spot that would easily be an 8 to 10K spot in New York or LA. The studio itself was so white, you'd think you were imprisoned in an asylum. But Deanna's taste was HGTV approved and balanced the landlord's sterileness with some wood features and centerpieces. For this night out, there was a whole slew of Deanna's friends who were strangers to me. Thankfully, my best friend Monica was here, so I wasn't socially at odds. I do think it's fun to blend friend groups. My parents have met most of my closest friends, and I can think of a handful of friends who have become friends due to their association with me. However, not all friends are great at intermingling. You have to be careful, like you're making meth. Not that I would know. Deanna introduced me to her crush that night, a man so irrelevant in my memory that I'll just call him Gerald. I don't mean that as an insult to all Geralds, just this Gerald. He was one of those stereotypical Caucasian persuasions, the type of man that looked like the impending collection of bad choices. We've all been on that roller coaster at least once. Some of us ride that train more than a regular on their favorite public transportation method. The cliche is true. There is something alluring about bad boys, people who don't want us, and people who look so devoid of passion. Like a Wheel of Fortune contestant with bad luck, I had spun on all three of those, each time thinking I'd get money, when in reality I was landing on bankrupt every time. I always feel like I'm on the stage. I'm still debating if it's a personality trait or a small bout of narcissism. So I chatted up with Deanna's friends who were strangers to me. Thankfully, Monica was on my side. It was like having a gun in a bar in Texas. You might just need to pull that surprise out of your pocket. The night swirled with White Claws, Geralds, and light music. But all of that would soon change because of not her real name, Jean. I can't remember how or why Jean was invited. Perhaps she was out of the street, like a social version of an unhoused individual. Jean might say, "Help, I have money, just no one to drink this 40 with." And people would walk by and say, "Honey, let's help this person by giving them social plans." Perhaps Jean was in the apartment hallway and happened to sneak in. A curious neighbor who wanted to probe the medication drawer and sneer at the coffee table book selection. Or maybe Jean was a ghost. Considering the outrageous juvenile behavior that most ghosts appear to command, maybe she was nothing more than a momentary apparition that would haunt our memories with her audacity. According to Deanna's memory, Jean was a friend of a friend that had tagged along for the evening. But it wasn't one of those friends who you're like, "Meet my friend Jean, she's amazing." It was more of a, "Jean came along, she's a friend." There's a major difference when the word friend is distanced from the name of the friend. It's like you're sending out vague warnings the person you brought along is a piece of shit. Let's run it through another example. My friend Lance is amazing at crocheting. Sounds like you like Lance, and he's good at crocheting. Lance is okay at crocheting, ... Thanks for allowing me to bring my ... friend. 2 ellipses. A refusal to hype up Lance's skills at the crochet? Unsure if Lance should be defined as a friend? I see more red flags in that sentence than an event hosted by the Chinese government propaganda machine. There are rules to group decorum, rules that I occasionally disregard lightly. 3 rules that are quite universal for strangers are that you shouldn't bombard them with controversial opinions, extremely vulgar jokes, or trauma. I've been known to bend these rules, especially the vulgar joke line. But when these rules are broken, they're broken with purpose. I've successfully read the room and know the rules well enough to know how I can break them. Jean clearly skipped Etiquette 101 because she immediately began dismantling the social biome like an invasive species. "Oh, you're eating these?" Jean pointed to a bag of veggie chips that was casually being munched on by a few people. Like chipmunks caught eating carrots, the guilty party froze mid-crunchery. There were responsive murmurs of yes, which made Jean tisk like an old librarian who had discovered people were utilizing the autonomy books for pornographic pleasures. "You do realize those are heavy in sodium?" Jean asked with the tone that the sodium level was a pipe bomb waiting to burst. Jean looked at the bag of veggie chips as if someone personal to her had been murdered by that particular bag. Jean went on a small tirade that had the keywords of heart issues, cholesterol, food industry, and inorganic. It just seemed rude to gang up on a few people for having veggie straws. It's like Debbie Downer, but with an additionally bitchy social justice warrior component added in. I don't know if Jean wanted to provide information, or maybe was working as a lobbyist for the potato chip industrial complex, but the whole event was immediately soured, and everyone refused to touch the bag of veggie chips out of worry over Jean's retribution. Moments later, another conversation was interrupted by Jean. I don't know the exact context of the original discussion, but Jean declared proudly that she didn't believe in women's rights. How we had gotten to Jean's opinion was lost history, but Jean's admission that she disagreed with women's rights told me all I needed to know about Jean. Jean was the type of woman who didn't have a lot of female friends. She would claim that she got on with men. She preferred to be noticed even negatively than not be noticed at all. In a world where she felt empty, she did her best to fill the space however she could. I felt like I was playing the role of a psychologist in a spin-off of The Silence of the Lambs that featured social crimes. While the room was slowly deflating like a stress ball that had been squeezed too hard by someone's meaty thighs, Jean was divulging some of her own problems. Jean did divulge that she and her boyfriend had gotten into a fight earlier that day. Maybe Jean had yelled at her boyfriend for having a sodium-saturated snicky snack like veggie chips. I doubt he cared if she was anti-woman. Most men are. Unable to enjoy the apartment party, Jean decided to call her paramour and left the party to turn the bathroom into a telephone booth. Jean leaving the party sent a wave of relief through the room that mirrored the moment when the man unbuttons the top button of his pants midway through a buffet. This brief respite shattered as a series of shouts began to escape from Deanna's bathroom. Dee's apartment featured an open living dining concept and a separate space for her bedroom, in which was the bathroom. You couldn't hide a screaming match within this tight square space. Turns out, Jean and Jean's boyfriend got into another fight. The unresolved issues from earlier were now spilling out like the amount of White Claws that we had had that night. After all, 2019 was truly White Claw's domination over the hard seltzer world. "Fuck you, and fuck your mom too," was the only line I could make out from her bathroom fight. I wondered, did the fight include his mom, or was Jean utilizing a standard line you say in anger? Or maybe Jean was actively trying to curb stomp on a woman's rights like a conservative Supreme Court justice. In anger and retaliation to her boyfriend and her boyfriend's mom, Jean slammed her wine glass against the wall of the bathroom. This wasn't a plastic wine glass or a shoddy glass. This was a proper Crate and Barrel wine glass, found its way smashed against Dee's bathroom wall. Not sure how that was revenge against the boyfriend who was in Lakewood. I think the reason I don't remember what was said was because all my memory and disbelief went into Jean's temper tantrum. I have a tendency to dramatize things because I get easily bored and need to be simulated like some middle school punk. I've jokingly told people that I reinvent reality in a creative way. However, this story has so far been and will remain entirely truthful. Multiple pregame witnesses recall Jean slamming that wine glass against the wall as if the wall was attacking her, and Jean had no choice but to act in self-defense. Not only did Jean damage property, but she left the glass on the floor of the bathroom. Let me add that it was a tiled bathroom. Unlike flat floors, tiled floors have small grooves and score lines. Cleaning glass from tile? I'd rather move to a new apartment. If I had been so enraged that I slammed a wine glass against the wall of a friend's bathroom, I would be absolutely embarrassed and be the first person to clean up the mess. You'd think Jean would have came to her senses and taken responsibility. But it was Deanna who ended up cleaning the shrapnel out of her tile floor. She was the host of the party, but also the birthday girl. Soon we were ready to order Ubers to the first bar of the night. Because there was 12 of us at this point, we divided into 3 teams for an impromptu amazing race with rideshare apps. This part always harkens back to pick your groups in grade school or pick your teams in dodgeball. It's a survival situation that even Darwin himself would enjoy witnessing from the corner of the room. I don't know why Jean was in my Uber team. I think other people successfully paired up quicker and even lied that they were filled up. Thankfully, Monica was with me, and we watched in horror as Jean made sassy comments to the Uber driver that ranged from his slower route to the bar, his driving habits, and more shocking statements. The destination was a half-dive bar meets sports bar meets pub called Map Room. It actually wasn't that far away, but when most of the group are girls in heels, 20 blocks feels like 100. My foursome via the app arrived first, even though Jean had declared our Uber drive the most inefficient. As if Jean was trying to prove that rock bottom was a social construct, she got into a fight with the bouncer. "I need you to take your ID out of your wallet," the bouncer said, firm but polite. Jean had one of those wallet purse combinations where you could see the ID through a transparent plastic window, but the bouncer wanted to scan the ID or see it from outside the plastic casing. "Well, can't you see it?" Jean asked, pushing her wallet purse and the ID closer to the guard as if he had bad eyes. She had pushed the wallet purse so close to his eyes that she was almost hitting him in the face with it. "No, I need to hold it." The bodyguard's voice was pretty even, considering he was reiterating instructions to an aggressive woman. Jean sassily took out her card while I did my best to act like I didn't know her. It was hard to pull that off, considering we had just climbed out of the same rideshare vehicle together. We made our way to the back of the bar. A more correct statement would be that Jean stomped to the back of the room. Map Room is designed as a tight rectangle with a long bar. Most of the front had been claimed up by 20-somethings. The other Uber groups soon arrived, and I found myself double-fisting a gin and tonic and Long Island iced tea. The bar was too peaceful for Jean. Even though Jean had argued with the Uber driver and with the bouncer, she was hungry for more altercation. She was like a debate student who would do anything to win for her preppy private Ivy League school. Everyone has that person in their life who is always looking for conflict. Sometimes they find the weirdest things to latch on and argue about. Sometimes they invent it. I'm still not sure how her next battle started. Unbeknownst to anyone in the group, Jean decided to play conquistador. She had stepped up to a nearby table of people. "I'm taking this table. We need this table," Jean said to the group, who was currently in the process of leaving the table. Jean didn't need to fight for the table for a few reasons. 1, there was plenty of tables. 2, we didn't need a table. We were comfortable at the bar. But the final and best reason, the people at the table were leaving. You could tell a couple people went to the bathroom, so the rest of the group was drinking the dregs of their drinks. If Jean really wanted the table, she could have politely asked for the table, but she purposefully was nasty over it. I watched in horror as this friend group tried ignoring Jean. But then the anger began to stir between everyone. The inner peacekeeper in me waltzed over with my 2 drinks. No one else in the group appeared willing or able to handle Jean. I threw Jean under the bus quicker than the speed of light. I didn't know Jean, so I felt no shame in calling her out on her behavior. Sharing an Uber ride to the bar and witnessing a bathroom meltdown barely made us acquaintances. And even if Jean had been a friend, I would have been mortified by her comments and behavior. By the time I had arrived to intervene, the table of innocent bystanders who were preparing to leave hadn't lobbed personal attacks. But Jean was an artist who had yet to find the right pen stroke and began weaponizing personal insults like an Italian grandmother. "You're 23 and you need Botox," Jean snapped to one girl. The girl Jean had insulted was 100 times more beautiful than Jean's very tired early 2000s attire. This poor girl in no way needed Botox. The friend group Jean had attacked were quite close to snapping back at Jean. I don't really recall how the situation de-escalated, but fortunately for me, I didn't see Jean for the rest of the night. I wonder if she felt personally betrayed that I told her victim that she didn't need Botox. The group slowly split up, as nights out with a ton of people do. Monica met up on a last-second date, leaving me with Deanna. Deanna and I and a couple others moved over to Dive Bar. Dive Bar was a place that wished it was a dive bar. Instead, it was what a rich white guy would describe as a dive bar, had he never been in a true dive establishment. By this point in the night, I could tell that I was slipping back into sobriety, and I had no desire to try and push myself upward towards tipsy again. In these moments, I'm usually drawn to my phone to play games or swipe on Tinder, while the drunks around me continue to fly high. But our high flight was immediately canceled when we discovered that Gerald, Dee's low-key romantic situation, ghosted her for another woman at Dive Bar. At the time, it was really shocking. But then again, we were at Dive Bar, which brings out the trash in people. Deanna was absolutely gutted, and we walked across downtown Cleveland as I pulled out every universal truth I could think of. Men are trash, there are other fish in the sea, Gerald was beneath her, etc. We ended up getting large slices of thin pizza that was a bit greasy that becomes legendary when drunk. Dee had a couple tears, but was more so shell-shocked, like she had seen a demon rather than lost a fuckboy. Do you think he would have ghosted you if we hadn't gone to Dive Bar? I asked, dabbing the pizza of grease as if that was truly going to change the calorie count I needed for this pizza to become healthy. I don't know, Dee truthfully answered, doing that internal replay of the night. We don't often think about how small choices play out. Maybe if Jean hadn't been such a glass-slamming, name-calling, enter word of choice here, she would have made new friends. Maybe if she had separated her anger from her boyfriend and strangers, she would have enjoyed the night out. But our own choices, of double-fisting a gin and tonic with a Long Island, my friend Monica's decision to end the night with a date, Dee's decision to pursue this, enter another expletive here, going to Map Room, going to Dive Bar, getting pizza, these all make a single strand, and we couldn't have predicted that strand. We just know that there would be a strand by the end of the night. That following morning, we got a stunning conclusion for what happened to Jean. Apparently, her anger had not cooled down, and she had decided to visit her boyfriend's house. Apparently, the house was locked, so Jean did what any normal person would do. She punched out a window, injuring her hand, and tried kicking down a door. Cops were called, and Jean ended up getting stitches. We also found out that Jean worked at a top bank in the city. Let's just say the young professional that she is on LinkedIn was not indicative of who Jean truly was. Months later, I found out that Jean had left Cleveland. I don't know where she is or what she's doing, but I'm assuming she's angrily strutting about, ruining as many people's nights as she can. All the outrageousness, the binge drinking for conformity, the late nights that involved bad decisions, terrible fast food, and the occasional love interest gone awry. Nothing has left me with the same reaction that Jean did. Not her real name Jean would not be toppled easily, and I think Jean herself would appreciate that she ruled all the nights out I've yet to have.